lesson is that what has been promises, they must be delivered. In today's context, where ASEAN is fully throttled toward regional integration, actions mean much more than words. ASEAN needs all the helping hand from external partners to achieve full integrations based on community building spirit. What is lacking behind in the India-ASEAN strategic partnership is not so much related to the lack of idea, but rather on how to bring to focus the core interests of both India and ASEAN in implementing whatever that has been described in all the action plan, or the so-called plan of action, now phase 3. I like to mention that in the previous POA 2010-2015, it was reported that due to the divergent range of proposal and the constraint due to resource and manpower, full implementations of the 82 items included a wide range of proposals for ASEAN-India cooperation in various fields, ranging from issues of international terrorism, drugs, to transportation and energy, has not been achieved. Furthermore, only some 40% of the 94 activities listed in the action plan, listed in the Plan of Action 2004-2009, have been completed, only 40%, according to the report of the ASEAN Secretariat during ASEAN-India Senior Official Meeting in March 2011. Now, if these trends continue, one would question the relevance of the Plan of Action 2016-2020 and the credibility and the viability of India's ASEAN strategic partnership will and could slide into irrelevance. Why India bear the responsibility for the performance deficit due to such issues of pressing security demand on its western fronts, the complex India democratic decision-making with heavy bureaucratic mindset and work culture which prevents swift reform, as well as limited diplomatic and economic resources, ASEAN also had to bear some responsibility for the slow pace of implementation due to the divergence in interests and approaches of ASEAN members toward India integration and over the expectations on India to do more for ASEAN. Now, by way of concluding, I'd like to offer some thought on the way forward. In a span of 25 years, ASEAN-India interactions have transformed satisfactorily from political security to trade to social cultural relations. India views ASEAN as sitting at the core of India's foreign policy. India is aiming to reorient its partnership with ASEAN and endeavor to make its engagement more pragmatic and action-based through the third phase of the Plan of Action 2016-2020. If ASEAN partnership is to evolve smoothly and in conformity with the vision statement to further advance and strengthen their cooperations and partnership to a high level, both sides need to strengthen their cooperations and partnership and streamline their respective response and show greater understanding of each other's asset, capability, and constraint. There is also a need for consensus among all ASEAN member states on the detail and specificity of ASEAN-related issues, particularly the Look East, Act East policy. This will ensure continuous mutual trust and confidence, which is very essential for lasting engagement between the two sides. Notwithstanding this good bound that has been achieved, the challenge with ASEAN-India relation is not lack of idea, but the inability to turn those ideas into reality. Going forward, ASEAN Indian engagement should not be evaluated or judged on the plethora of initiatives crafted in all relevant documents which define ASEAN-India strategic engagement, but more on both sides' ability to deliver on specific initiatives on the ground in Southeast Asia, so that full benefit of their bilateral tie can be maximized. I thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Sutiraj. I really appreciate your very candid remarks, because seldom in a conference, we hear such a frank and open evaluation of relationship. So I'm really grateful to you that you shared your views very forthrightly. They're most useful. I think the point which you made about mutual trust and confidence, that has to be borne by all of us. And I think we need to really give a serious thought to that. Similarly, the issue which you mentioned, that inability to turn initiatives or schemes into action, I think nothing could be more true than that, because otherwise all this would remain only on paper. So I think what we need to also see where the problems lie. Are there any issues outstanding on the ASEAN side either? I think together we need to sit across the table and see where the problems are and what solutions can be worked out amicably in the larger interest of the strategic partnership that we have. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Ambassador Amar Sinha. He is the Distinguished Fellow of the RIS and former Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs. Over to you, Amar.
Thank you, sir. Ambassador Devre, Vice Chair Mohan Kumar, distinguished panelists and all the participants present here. First of all, of course, I'm congratulating RIS and AIC is in order that they did this in a timely manner and actually opportune that a few weeks before we commemorate the 25 years of our relationship with ASEAN. And it gives us, and it's the moment for us to retrospect and also to look ahead. Of course, Ambassador gave a fairly good idea of what all has happened. We all know how engaged we are in all different fora. There are 30 dialogue mechanisms. We participate in all the ASEAN security-related structures, whether it is ARF or the defense ministers meet. And in the inaugural session, you heard about the 3 C's on which the focus has been: the commerce, connectivity, and culture. So let me not dwell too much on the retrospection. In fact, a huge compendium has just been launched. Let me look at the way forward and what the problem is. One problem, of course, as was pointed out here from the chair, from this dais, was issue of implementation. And I guess the resolution here, really, I would disagree to the extent that India's security engagements on its west detracts from its ability to deliver on the east. That, I think, is underestimating India's capacities. That I would have to say right up front. I don't think there is any connection between that, and our commitment to the east is strong. In fact, look east for Indians comes very naturally. Actually, it has spiritual sort of beginnings. Every morning, Indians get up and look east at the rising sun, either pour water or do pranam. So formulating a look east policy, I think, came very naturally to us. Then came the act east policy. We drew up different plans of actions, etc. And then the strategic partnership. The problem, as I see, really is that while all different pillars have worked well, with different speeds, could be that their speeds of implementations are wrong. And of course, this is not a forum to go into the details of or pointing fingers. But I can assure you that having looked at development partnership myself, though not fully all the ASEAN projects, I can say that there are problems on both sides. There are problems of land acquisition, there are problems of customs clearances, there are problems of internal approvals. parliamentary approvals for taking loans. So there are a range of issues which besets and delays the project. So I don't think blame could be placed on either one. In any case, blame game doesn't lead us anywhere. The idea is that the joint working groups need to sit together and sort out these problems. But the biggest problem in strategic partnership, and perhaps a weakness, is the focus on political security dialogue. And that is something that most analysts realize, that the political security aspects of India-ASEAN relationships are underdeveloped. It has been changed at the highest levels, but that is perhaps not sufficient. Prime Minister attends all these meetings, but there's still something more. I don't know whether it is the non-threatening nature of the relationship that India enjoys with ASEAN that puts this aspect of the relationship on second rung. It's not given the same priority as perhaps ASEAN would give to China's political relationship or engaging US. So we all have to reflect, and we have to consciously decide that what is it that we wish to do. And so let me just dwell on two things. I would think that going forward, we really need to focus on connectivity, besides, of course, the plans of actions and the development aspects. As Vice Chairman said, merging East. You can only merge East if you are very well connected. And for that, Northeast is our gateway. Myanmar has both the connectivity potential, but more important, our internal security aspect, which is very important, and this is an important member of ASEAN, and that is one area we would like to focus on. Connectivity, security, export of terror, and spread of fundamentalist ideologies. So the security aspects. In the other larger maritime dimension, of course, Admiral Dovan has very well listed out the aspects we do, but there needs to be certain governing principles and common values that should guide our actions. And what are these common values? We have to politically agree that there are certain values and principles that we all, ASEAN adheres to and India adheres to. And in this context, I would like to perhaps paraphrase, which was stated by one of our own important strategic partners, not very recently, which I think with certain changes applies to how we look at Indo-Pacific region, of which ASEAN is an important partner and India has a major interest. And let me just paraphrase these, that our maritime dimension of our relationship and how we focus on Indo-Pacific should focus at ensuring a free and open region where the rule of law and democratic principles are reflected in rule-based order. We should promote, of course, respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity. We should guarantee freedom of navigation, overflight, commerce, and other lawful uses of the sea. Ensure that territorial and maritime disputes are resolved peacefully, consistent with international law. And think how we will collectively deal with the conflicts that we see that arise in this region. And in this context, I would say that the internal cohesion and unity and centrality of ASEAN is very, very important. Any solution that India will provide, as Ambassador said, perhaps we have not been seen as very proactive, because India likes to, as a choice, support ASEAN initiatives. The solutions have to come from ASEAN, which India then supports, rather than come with a pre-cooked solution and present it to you, as we see that many countries tend to do. We also promote economic connectivity, including through private sector-led growth, and use of responsible debt financing, which is sustainable and which respects sovereignty of nations which participate in development of these structures. And of course, there should be transparent development of infrastructure. In fact, in this connection, I would like to draw the attention of the gathering here to the new initiative, which is called the Asia-Africa Growth Corridor. And I think ASEAN should be deeply interested in Japan-India initiative, basically because even if it has not saturated. I think intra-ASEAN and ASEAN's regional trade is near saturation. It is extremely intense. And there is a need, if this region needs to continue to grow, to look at newer markets. And Africa is one such area where we are trying to connect right through India to Southeast Asia, whether these are ports in Thailand or in Myanmar. So these are things that we would want ASEAN to partner with us. And this also has a maritime dimension, which actually encompasses the Indian Ocean Rim and the Indo-Pacific regions. Of course, and lastly, as I had already said, that the problem of terrorism, we face it, of course, on a daily basis. But I know that there have been sporadic attacks in ASEAN. Some countries have had more, some less. But that is a threat which is latent. And in many countries, it's just below the surface. And I have served there. It was perhaps the worst period when I served in Indonesia, when the attacks at Marriott and Bali bombing, etc., took place. Luckily, it has been under control. But you see the Islamic State in Philippines and all sorts of tendencies growing. So that is something that we can cooperate both in learning from each other's experiences, intelligence sharing. And the third thing, of course, as